So, look, I know that learning outcomes are not the most exciting things to talk about, but I cannot overstate their importance for us as learners and teachers. Learning outcomes are essentially the glue that holds everything together in terms of the activities, assignments, and assessments we do. Everything we do in the classroom can and should ultimately point back to our learning outcomes. For my reading and writing classes and my students, we use our course learning outcomes on midterm and final portfolio peer assessments, self assessments, and instructor assessments. Thus, through our learning outcomes, we're able to create a shared language around writing assessment. With that, here's an overview slash review of our course learning outcomes. At Fresno State, we use the same learning outcomes for English 5A, English 5B, and English 10. For our portfolio assessment, there are 5: reading and writing strategies, reflection, summary conversation, rhetoricality, and language coherence. Note that in English 5A, at the midterm, we generally focus just on reading and writing strategies, summary conversation, and rhetoricality. But we will use all 5 for the final portfolio. We use all 5 in English 5B and English 10 for both the midterm and final portfolios. Let's start with reading and writing strategies. This learning outcome says that students will grow by selecting and identifying strategies to read and write actively, purposefully, and rhetorically. Taken mostly from our textbooks, we practice a lot of reading and writing strategies in our first year writing program. To assess growth in this area, we'll look at the writer's reflective writing for instances of them naming, defining, and/or describing reading and writing strategies they've used in their portfolio. We'll also look for their purposeful use of those reading and writing strategies in their writing. The more specific, the more toward exceeding expectations they'll rate. Students who appear to depend on habits and practices prior to our first year writing courses will likely not meet expectations on this outcome. Reflection. This learning outcome says that students will grow by making meaningful generalizations and reflections about reading and writing practices and processes. This is an important part of our learning process because we learn not just through practice and trial and error, we also learn by reflecting on and evaluating what we have done. We'll look for meaningful and purposeful reflection, obviously, in the writer's reflective writing. Reflection that mindfully predicts how these new knowledges might transfer to other areas of life beyond our English classroom will likely exceed expectations on this outcome, while reflections that minimally list what the writer did in the course might not meet expectations. Summary conversation. This learning outcome says that students will grow by constructing purposeful summaries, integrating what they say into writing effectively or self-consciously, by appropriately incorporating quotes into the writing by means of clear punctuation, attribution, and relevance, and by discussing and using texts as conversations in writing. Thus, their writing demonstrates entering into a written conversation of ideas. Writers who purposefully and effectively integrate sources into their writing, clearly name and cite the authors whom they're citing, make connections between sources, and document sources in MLA style will definitely meet expectations, even if there are a few minor mistakes. Few to no mistakes would exceed expectations. Characteristics not meeting expectations would include overdependence on long-form direct quotations, irrelevant quotes or quotes left to speak for themselves, little to no connection among the variety of sources used, not using the required number of sources, repeated errors in citation and documentation, and so on. Rhetoricality. This learning outcome says that students will grow by distinguishing and making use of the rhetorical features of texts they read and write, such as purpose, audience, context, rhetorical appeals, and elements. Our first-year writing courses emphasize the idea that genres exist as patterns of communication that come to life in a variety of communication situations, including reading and writing. We focus on different genres with each writing project, each of which comes with a unique rhetorical situation. Writers who meet or exceed expectations in this outcome demonstrate with their writing that they understand the writing genre they're working in, and they make conscious and purposeful language choices that fit within the communication patterns of that genre. Writers who do not make conscious language choices and do not engage in the key features of the writing genres we're practicing will likely not meet expectations on this outcome. Language coherence. This learning outcome says that students will grow by developing unified and coherent paragraphs and sentences that have clarity and some variety. This is about more than just grammar. Good academic writing focuses around a central topic or issue, usually announced in a thesis statement somewhere early on in the essay. Then, each paragraph subsequently brings into focus an element of the writer's thesis, providing more detail, claims, explanations, evidence, and so on. Each paragraph likewise following logically from the previous paragraph and into the next paragraph. Writers who exceed expectations on this outcome do all of this, using topic sentences and transitional sentences to aid in the logical flow of ideas from paragraph to paragraph. Writers who tend to depend on the same tried and true sentence structures and who do not use paragraphs purposefully as organizational units in their writing might not meet expectations on this outcome. Okay, so there you have it. I hope that this explanation and review of our course learning outcomes helps clarify our expectations for our course and sets you up for successful work in our portfolio, peer assessments, and self-assessments. Thanks for watching and happy writing, everyone.